school-wide. We're so happy to have this wonderful presentation this morning for all of you. I'm very honored to announce Dino Ambrosi, and I'm not going to say much because he's going to share a little bit about his story, but essentially he's a former tech addict on a mission to help others build healthy relationships with their devices. So I'm going to turn it on over to Dino. Let's give him a warm Panther welcome.
Good morning, y'all. How we doing? Good? That wasn't very exciting. How we doing? All right, well, I'm super excited to be here. I do want to ask for your forgiveness because the start of this presentation is a little bit heavy, so just bear with me. I promise things will lighten up shortly. But the dots on this screen represent an adult life in months, assuming a life expectancy of 90. So for anybody that's 18 right now, this is an optimistic estimate of how many months you have left. So just take a second and take that in. It's probably not as many as you would expect, and I'm sorry to say that it does get a little bit worse because about a third of those months will be spent sleeping. You're sleeping 8 hours a night, not that that's a bad thing. If you do a normal 40-hour per week job until you're 65, you'll spend about 126 months actively working or studying. About 18 will be spent driving, 36 cooking and eating, 36 doing chores and errands, and about 27 in the bathroom and taking care of personal hygiene, which is a long 2+ years that all of us are in for. So that leaves you with 334 months, optimistically, for everything else in life. And I want you all to stop for a second and ask yourselves, what deserves the largest chunk of that remaining free time? Does anyone want to share? What's the first thing that pops into your mind? Anybody? Yeah. Hanging out with friends and family. Great answer. Let's take one more. Come on, y'all. Don't be shy. One more answer. Anybody? Man, I know it's early. Come on, guys. Somebody over here. What's the first thing that pops in your mind? That one? How about you? Yourself, right? Self-care, hobbies. So yeah, everything that's on your bucket list, all the hobbies and the passions that you want to pursue, the places you want to go, the people that you want to spend time with, all of that has to happen in 334 months. But right now in the United States, the average 18-year-old is currently on pace to spend over 90% of their remaining free time looking at a screen non-productively. So let me clarify a couple things. When I say non-productively, I mean time spent on a laptop for school, that's not counted here. Google Maps, that doesn't count either. This is just social media, entertainment on things like YouTube and Netflix, and video games. The average 13 to 18-year-old in the United States currently spending 8 hours and 39 minutes per day, and that's the average. So about half of us are above that. And take a second to really process how sad this picture is, right? Imagine getting to the age of 90, and you look back on your life, and you think about the things that you could have done with this free time that you didn't do because you got distracted. Now, I've shown this graph to a lot of students now. Typically, I get one of two reactions to it. I can tell just by looking out at the audience that some of you are pretty freaked out by this, and I'm guessing that's because you have a relationship with technology that you are not super happy with, and that's okay. Most of us are there. But I know that there are probably also quite a few of you in here that look at this and think, okay, that's a wild graph, but it doesn't really apply to me. I'm not spending 8 hours, 39 minutes per day. I'm down at, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 hours. And frankly, this whole conversation about screen time and social media and smartphones and all the phone rules, it's just overblown. It's parents that didn't grow up with this freaking out about something that's new. I know that some of you feel that way because that's exactly how I felt when I was in high school. And I, like I'm sure many of you did, got a lot of lectures from the adults in my life about how just bad screens are. For me, the majority of those came from my grandparents, Ted and Sandy, bless their hearts. They were in their mid-60s when the iPhone came out. So all of this is super new to them. And it makes sense that they would freak out when they would see their grandchildren scrolling on this device that had just been invented. So they'd give us these long talks about how they spent all their time outside when they were our age, and we need to get out more and keep kids. And it was just really hard to take seriously because they spend more time on Facebook than I have ever spent on Instagram or Snapchat. And again, they're new to this, they don't really understand it. So they're those people where anytime they see a post that asks them to share it, they feel like it's their moral obligation to share it to all of their friends and family. So you'll scroll through their Facebook page and you'll see things like, who still loves root beer close? Share if you do. And a couple days later, they'll be going through their own Facebook feed and they'll see this post again and they'll see the word share and they'll think they need to reshare it to all their friends and family. So there are all these things that have been shared 2, 3, 4 times on their Facebook page. It's one of the funniest collections of content on the internet. So anyway, every time I go and visit them, I try to help them out a little bit, just get them in the loop about internet culture, the way that teens and young adults use social media. And I think it's finally starting to work because this was my grandma's comment on my most recent Facebook profile photo. Look at that, got the no cap emoji and everything. I'm so proud of them. You can hear me clap once. Thank you. All right, but the point stands. Again, when I was in high school, I was not worried about this. My phone felt like a tool that made my life better. I didn't spend an egregious amount of time on it, and it just wasn't something that concerned me very much. But that changed a lot after I graduated high school. Because the truth is, I was not ready for what came next for me. I got to college in the fall of 2017, I was just generally unprepared. Academically, a lot harder than anything I'd ever done. First time away from home. But the biggest challenge that I didn't see coming was the decrease in the structure of my schedule. Because kindergarten through the end of high school, right? During the school year, in the week, you're coming to campus, you're going from class to class to class, you've got a bell schedule. A lot of you probably have some extracurriculars outside of school. For the most part, the waking hours of your day during the week, you don't really have to make decisions about what you're doing with that time. At least I didn't when I was in high school. And then you get to college or a lot of jobs that people will go into right after college, and it's totally different, right? Your schedule is a lot more open. My first semester, I had 7 times that I needed to be on campus throughout the entire week, often for just an hour. So there are these big blocks of free time that I have to figure out how to use, and I had no idea how to manage that. Now, I'll admit, I probably had too much fun during that first month. I fell pretty far behind in school. And my first midterm rolled around, and I got a 20% on my first math test in college. So that was a pretty big wake-up call for me, because I'd always been a pretty good student. I never really failed a test before. 20% is not just failing, that's like fun. You weren't even close to getting a D. So it was a huge shock to my system, and I remember having this conversation with myself, where I told myself, I was going to get back on the horse, I was really going to buckle down and dig myself out of this hole that I found myself in. But this was the first time in my life, personally, that I had dealt with like chronic levels of stress. I've been stressed out before, I've been anxious. Everybody feels that at some point or another growing up. This was a different level for me. I just really didn't feel like I was in a good place in terms of what I was studying, the school I was at. I didn't feel like I belonged there. And I wasn't sure if I was good enough to make it through school. And in hindsight, that was a really good opportunity for me to grow a lot inside and outside of school. But unfortunately, I didn't face this challenge head on because without even thinking about it, I developed the habit of running away from this stress by turning to the phone that was sitting in my pocket. Now this started in a really innocent way. I'd get stuck on a math problem in the library, I'd tell myself, you know what, I'm just gonna take a 5-minute break on Instagram. That usually turned into 25 or 30 minutes, I'm sure we've all been there. But it should be obvious that's really not a good response to stress, right? Because you're just avoiding whatever led to that stress in the first place. And that problem's still gonna be there, right? The test is still gonna happen, the assignment's still gonna be due. You're just setting yourself up for more stress. And when that additional stress arrives, you've already started to train yourself to run away from it by turning to social media. So what starts to happen, this is really important to understand, the more times that this cycle repeats, the lower your tolerance becomes for all forms of discomfort. Now it's not just stress that makes you turn to social media. It's boredom, it's anxiousness, loneliness, social awkwardness, fatigue. I got to the point, I could not even fall asleep at the end of the day without being on my phone. Literally just lying in bed, sitting alone with my thoughts, processing how the day didn't go the way that I wanted it to. That was too uncomfortable for me to bear. So I just watched YouTube until I passed out every night. So I'm staying up until 1 or 2 in the morning. Now I'm getting 5 or 6 hours of sleep. I'm waking up, I'm tired, I'm groggy, I'm easily distracted. So I'm on my phone even more, which makes me fall farther behind in school, which makes me get more stressed out, which makes me turn to my phone more. So I hope it's pretty easy to see that this could be a really vicious cycle. And it only takes a couple of weeks or a couple of months for your phone to transform from a tool that really does make your life better to basically a digital pacifier that you use to numb uncomfortable emotions. And that's a really damaging thing. Because if you think about it, any area of your life that you're trying to grow in, any goal that you're working towards, is on the other side of some form of discomfort. Right? You're just not going to learn hard concepts. You're not going to build skills if you don't try things you don't know how to do, fail at them, ask for help, and try again. That's not a comfortable process. Any athletes in the room? So you know this is true as well, right? Nobody's ever gotten better at running without running to the point of discomfort. You got to train to the point where it doesn't feel good. And I think this applies to pretty much every area of my life. Because my inability to handle discomfort totally stunted my growth in college. I thought it was going to be this amazing experience where I was going to transform into a better person. Instead, it felt like I went backwards. After a couple of years, I literally felt like a shell of my former self. It's really weird being 20 years old and feeling like you're not as good of a person as you were when you were in high school. And there were some serious consequences to this. I mean, for one, I didn't fail out of school, but it was pretty close, and I certainly didn't learn very much. I wasted a ton of time that I'm never going to get back. Those are memories that I could have been making with people that are now my best friends that I didn't, because I was spending about 5 hours a day scrolling through Instagram or watching YouTube videos, often while just lying in bed. And I regret that so much. I wish I could go back and reclaim those moments, but I can't, they're gone. But I think the biggest effect for me was to the way that I viewed myself, my self-esteem. Because I knew that this was a problem. I did not want to be spending as much time as I was staring at my phone. I tried to get my screen time down multiple times. I would delete Instagram, delete YouTube for a week, think that was going to solve the problem. A couple weeks later, I'm right back where I started. I don't use this word lightly, but it was an addiction. I was legitimately addicted to my phone. And I did not see a way out of it. I felt super stuck. Until one day, I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to hit the reset button. I got offered an internship out in New York City, and that required me to take some time off school. I jumped at that because I knew that I needed just a full environment change to break these bad habits. So I moved out there in January of 2020. Turns out that was really not a good time to move out to New York. So I thought I was going to be there for longer than I was, but while I was out there, I got off social media for about a month. I started to rebuild some good habits that I lost. And I was surrounded by these coworkers that were a few years older than me that actually knew how to use technology in a positive way. They had really good systems set up for managing their time to make sure no tasks were slipping through the cracks, or learning things that made them better at their jobs. There was this big aha moment for me that the same exact devices that had held me back for so long could actually be used to make my life a lot better if I figured out how to tap into them. So I just totally changed the way that I interact with technology. And over the next few months, a number of amazing improvements happened across a bunch of areas of my life. I ended up doing really well in that job. They promoted me to a full-time position. I got back in shape. I ran my first marathon a year after going out to New York. That's something I never thought I was going to be able to do. When I got back to school for my senior year, it was just so much easier. Because not only did I have an extra 3 to 4 hours per day to use in any way that I wanted, I actually had systems to manage my time and use that effectively. So I got straight A's for the first time in college while still having time to hang out with friends and make memories that I can look back on really fondly. Now I share that story with all of you because it highlights the fact that your devices, your smartphone, your laptop, they can be weight vests or they can be jetpacks. They definitely have the power to hold you down, to make your life a lot more difficult than it needs to be, and to prevent you from spending your free time in a way that you find fulfilling. But they also have the power to lift you to new heights. The direction that they move you, it's a question of whether or not you're able to use them intentionally and with a purpose. But that's not an easy thing to do. And most of us are not being taught how to build a healthy relationship with technology. I had to figure all this out by myself. It was really hard. It took a lot of trial and error. So when I got back to Berkeley for my senior year, I decided to create this semester-length class called Becoming Tech Intentional. Now the idea here was to basically condense this tech transformation that I had gone through into a set of steps that anyone could follow to reset their tech habits. So I made the application for this class, and I put it on Berkeley's website with no idea what to expect in terms of how many people were going to apply. I mean, it's a class about using your phone less, right? I thought maybe I'd get like 5 to 10 people to want to sign up for it. We needed to get 17 to run the class. It was a minimum of 17 seats. We had over 400 students apply to this class. Even as someone that had struggled with this, that was shocking to me. I didn't realize that that many people were struggling with it. And I want to share with all of you some of the responses to the first question on the application, which was describe your current relationship with your phone. I had one student say, a couple of weeks ago, my phone was run over by an SUV. The feeling was akin to losing a pet. So let's all take a moment of silence for my friend's iPhone that's no longer with us. But some of the responses were a little bit more striking than that. I had one student say, my current relationship with technology is trash. I scroll on Instagram or TikTok late at night, knowing I need to sleep, but feeling like I physically can't get off my phone. I waste so much time, I feel like an addict, my phone enables my procrastination, and I hate it. I'm stuck in this negative feedback loop. I hate it so much, but sometimes it just feels like I'm in too deep to break it. I'm currently losing the war for control over my life. So again, those are real UC Berkeley students that are saying that. And even though I would have written almost the same exact things on this application a couple of years prior, I was shocked to see that many responses like this. Because when I was struggling with this, I actually thought I was the only one that was having this problem. It made no sense to me. I could not understand for the life of me why I couldn't keep myself from spending 5 hours a day looking at this stupid little screen in my pocket. It frustrated me to no end. The only explanation that I could come up with was that there was something wrong with me, that I was broken in some way, so I just blamed myself. And I had these feelings of shame and guilt that prevented me from talking to anybody about this. Not my friends, definitely not my family. I just bottled it up. All of my students did the same exact thing. When we got into a room together, it was like you could see the weight being lifted off of their shoulders as they realized they were not the only ones that were struggling with this. So for those of you in here, and I know that you're in here, that have a relationship with technology, whether it's social media or YouTube or video games, that you are deeply unhappy with, do not blame yourself. Okay, you're not the only one struggling with this, and it's not your fault. The average 18-year-old wouldn't be on pace to spend 93% of their remaining free time on screens if you were to blame for this. The reason that so many of us are struggling with our screens is because all of us are being manipulated for profit by multi-billion-dollar tech companies that don't have our best interests at heart. Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok, all those apps are free for you to use. And that's because you are not their customer, you are their product that they sell. They make money by giving advertisers access to your time, attention, and data. And they've worked with the world's best psychologists and neuroscientists. They've partnered with the gambling industry to figure out how to make their apps as addictive as possible. Because the bottom line, how much money they take home is a question of how much of that free time can they capture. Now, there's only so much free time, right? So they're actually in a battle with each other. And anytime one of them has a breakthrough, every other app has to do the same thing. So back in 2015, YouTube figures out we can get people to watch a lot more YouTube if we just make the videos play one after another. It's a feature called autoplay. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's been sucked into a rabbit hole because of it. When they did that, the time that people spent on Netflix went down. So Netflix had to add autoplay the next year. Now recently, back in about 2018, so I guess not that recent, TikTok had a breakthrough. TikTok figured something out that made their app way more addictive than every other social media that came before, and it's changed all of social media afterward. Can anybody guess, what was TikTok's big breakthrough that made their app so addictive? You say For You page? COVID. That was definitely part of it. But yeah, I would say what TikTok figured out is that if you're a social media company, it makes zero sense to let the people using your app decide what they want to look at. When Instagram first came out, it looked like this. This was the version of the app that I downloaded when I was in like 6th or 7th grade. And it was a social media app. The whole point was to improve your social life by helping you connect with friends and family and maybe a couple of athletes or celebrities or whatever that you wanted to follow along to. But at the end of the day, you were in control. The posts that showed up on this feed, they were from accounts that you decided to follow. And then TikTok comes along and they say, why would we restrict the content that we can show the people on our app to just the accounts they've decided to follow? We'll just pull from everything that's ever been uploaded. Sure enough, it worked really well. Time on TikTok went through the roof. Time on Instagram went down. Plummeted. So what did Instagram have to do? They had to add Reels, right? So over the last 5 to 10 years, social media has gone from being social media to being entertainment. It's closer to a bite-sized version of Netflix than the actual helpful tool that it came out as almost 20 years ago. So what that means is all of us are walking around with a perfectly engineered dopamine factory that's sitting in our pocket all the time. It's an instant escape from anything uncomfortable, designed to pull us down rabbit holes. And that is not natural. Humans are not designed to have access to instant gratification all the time. And there are consequences to it, beyond just the amount of time it consumes. The time that we spend on screens, it impacts how we think, how we feel, and what we believe. And all of that is to say, this graph is actually a lot scarier than you probably initially thought. Because that free time, that's not just something that you spend on experiences, that's something that you invest in yourself. The decisions that you make about how to use it are going to determine the kind of person you become. So do not let yourself get to the age of 90 only to look back on your life and realize that while you were trying to avoid FOMO, you actually missed out on living. Now I know that was a bit heavy. I do want to shift to a more positive note, which is that nobody is destined for this outcome. If you're struggling with your screen time right now, there are things that you can do today to make it better. And if this isn't a problem for you yet, that's awesome. But there are steps that you should probably take to make sure it doesn't become an issue in the future. Now, the student that wrote this on their application, his name was John. He came into my class, he was averaging about 7.5 hours per day, non-productively on screens. 12 weeks later, he was down to 1.5 hours. He said he was happier, getting more done, in better shape, felt like the class laid the foundations for the rest of his life. Across the 110 students that took my course, the average screen time reduction was about 3.5 hours per day, over 50%. Now, an important thing to recognize here is in most college classes, you're graded on a curve. So it's not actually what you get out of 100 that determines the grade that you get. It's what you get compared to everybody else in your class. And if your classmates are averaging like 7 hours a day on screens, and you're down at 2 or 3, which is still a lot, right? You can watch a whole movie a day and still have time to get caught up on social media. But you'll have an extra 4 to 5 hours that you can use in any way that you want to. That's such an unbelievable advantage. It's literally like a superpower to have a healthy relationship with technology and social media as a teen or young adult today. Sure enough, I had a number of students that got straight A's for the first time in college the semester they took that course and lowered their screen time, and still had time to hang out with friends and do all that fun stuff too. So I want to share with you all the 3 keys that we uncovered while we taught that class to building a healthier relationship with technology. So that's mindset, environment, and habits. We'll go through these one by one. Mindset is just the way that you view technology and your intentions for using it. Now, based off everything I've said, you might assume that I'm going to advocate for a mindset that would encourage you to book a flight to Finland and go participate in the annual mobile phone throwing world championships and just throw your phone as far as you possibly can and watch it blow up on the ground. This is a real event that happens every year, which I find hilarious. That's not what I'm advocating for, though. Again, there's a lot of positive aspects to technology, and social media can be great too. I still use Instagram almost every single day. I think it's an overall good thing for my life. I am not telling you to delete it or get off it entirely. What I am saying is that all of us need to realize that social media is not actually free. We just pay for it with our time, and they're making money off the time that we're spending. So to make this point a little clearer, I want to run a little thought experiment. I want to ask you all, if you woke up tomorrow and social media decided, you know what, we're not actually going to be free anymore. We're going to require people to pay a monthly fee to keep using our apps. How much could they get you to pay? 0? Anybody else? Think about the app you use the most. What's the most they could get you to pay per month? Let's get a couple answers over here. 0? $5? $1? One more answer. $100 a month? A day? All right, money bags. Say something for the rest of us. All right. So most people, when I ask them this question, they say somewhere between nothing and $10 a month. The highest serious answer I've ever heard is $100 a month for TikTok. And people hear that and they think, you must have lost your marbles. $100 a month, that's crazy. In a certain way though, some of us are actually already paying more than that. So I've got a second question for you, which is if you had the option to buy an extra hour of the day that you could use however you wanted to, whether that's hanging out with friends or doing a hobby, playing sports, being with your family, how much would you pay per hour? Now you could also use this hour to work and get that time back and more, right? So use that to think about it. Everyone's gonna have a different answer to this question. For the sake of this argument, we're just gonna assume that you value your time at $10 per hour. I hope it's more than that, but we'll just go with this. If you're spending 4 hours a day on TikTok, and there are 30 days in a month, you are effectively paying $1,200 per month for TikTok with your time. So when we think about it in this way, we realize that many of us are actually overpaying for social media, even though it's technically free. So my ask of you is really simple. Again, I'm not saying that we need to get rid of these things. I'm just saying that you have to figure out for yourself, what does it mean for you to get a good deal out of these apps? Now there's no one answer to that. There's no right amount of time to spend. You've just got to ask yourself, what is this adding to my life? What value am I getting? And how much of my time is that really worth? And if you're spending more time than that, you are getting ripped off. Now another mindset thing that I encourage you to think about is the fact that all of us have content diets that I would say are just as important as our nutritional diets. So in the same way that the food that we're eating that's obviously affecting our physical health, the information that we consume online, that's affecting our mental health, our mood, our attention span, our worldview, our skill set. We should treat it with the same level of respect. So I want to give you all some guidance on how to think about the content that you can consume online. There's really 2 things to think about, I think. The nature of the content, is it entertaining or is it informative? Some content can be both, which is great. It can also be neither. Just see the Snapchat Discover page, it's like the worst collection of content on the internet. If it's neither of these things, it's not worth your time, right? But we also need to think about, is the content that we're consuming short or is it long? The reason that that's important is because, especially before you're 25 years old, but throughout your whole life, you've got this wonderful thing called neuroplasticity. Big word, means something really simple actually, which is that your brain is always changing based on what you're doing. It's like you're always training yourself to get better at something. Now, I know I've been up here talking for a while now, and we're starting to get into neuroscience, and this is typically where students tell me that I kind of start to lose them, their attention starts to drift a little bit. So I figured I would just put something on the screen to make it a little bit easier to stay engaged. But the reason I bring this up, if you can hear me clap once. The reason I bring this up is because I want us to ask ourselves, when we're on an app like TikTok, and the average piece of content is about 15 seconds long, and a lot of those pieces of content have multiple things playing at once. You might have Family Guy on the top half of the screen and Subway Surfers on the bottom. What are we training our brain to get better at? I would say we're training our brains to get better at being distracted. Because we get used to switching our attention every couple of seconds, right? If we're doing that for multiple hours per day, it's no secret it's going to be a lot harder to focus for a long period of time. Obviously, that's going to make school more difficult. I think we all recognize that. But there's a bunch of different areas of our life that affects too. I mean, when I was really struggling with social media, it affected my relationships in a big way. Because I couldn't actively listen to a story that someone was telling me for more than a couple of minutes. If somebody's rambling about, oh, he said this and she did that and whatever, my attention would start to drift off. And I'd forget things. I was being a worse friend because I couldn't hold my attention for that long. Now the good news is, in the same way that TikTok will shorten your attention span, long content can actually help it out. Right? Reading books, watching movies, TV shows even, assuming you're actually fully watching it and not also scrolling TikTok at the same time, focusing your attention on one train of thought for a long period of time, that does nurture your attention span. So it's something that you can change in a positive direction too. So that gives us these four corners of the content map. Now this bottom left corner, this is short form entertainment. These are things like TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. Again, I'm not saying it's all bad. Yeah, you can learn stuff on TikTok, but if you learn anything, you learn a little bit about a lot of things and a lot about nothing. And at the end of the day, you are not in control an algorithm is. So I would just say, treat this as dessert, right? Have some of it, but it probably shouldn't be like 80% of the content that you're consuming. This bottom right corner, things like news articles and Khan Academy videos, I think it's a little bit overrated. The protein and the vegetables of your content diet is this top right corner. Long form, informative content. And take a second to just really acknowledge what an unbelievable resource the internet can be if we use it well. It's just all the information that humans have ever recorded. For so long, for most of history, a very small percentage of people had access to the best information. Now, almost everybody does. And the things that you can do with this are amazing, right? Any skill you want to build. For the most part, there's a free online course or YouTube videos or a podcast that can help you build that skill. If you think about, where do I want to be in 5 to 10 years? I can almost guarantee you there's someone that's there or close to being there that has a podcast or a YouTube channel where they're giving you for free the biggest lessons they learned between where you are now and where they are. And just think about what would happen if you took an hour a day that you normally spend in this bottom left corner and you moved it to the top right. How much could you learn and change in 1 month, or 1 year, or a decade, or a lifetime? Now lastly, we have this top left corner, long form entertainment. I actually think this corner is a little bit underrated because not only does reading fiction books and watching movies improve your attention span as opposed to shorten it, It's actually been shown engaging with long stories makes you a more empathetic person that can connect with people better. Because you're walking in the shoes of other people, you're seeing things from their perspective, you're getting introduced to new social situations that you haven't encountered yet. I think it's actually a good use of free time in moderation to watch movies and TV shows, a lot better than TikTok, I would say. So I hope that this helps you get clear on how you want to use the internet moving forward. Those intentions are important. Alone, they're not enough. To actually make them a reality, you've got to make some additional changes. And there's two types of changes you can make. You can make external changes to your environment and internal changes to your habits. Now the environment changes, these are the easy ones. This is just making it so that you can stick to your screen time goals with less willpower. There's a few things you can do here. First, there's physical environment changes. So the number one thing, move the phone charger away from your bed so that you're not scrolling as you're falling asleep or waking up. That's such a big hack. Your sleep's gonna be so much better. It'll be a lot easier to resist distraction the next day. Also, studying with your phone in your backpack or in a different room. Huge life hack as well. There's a study that actually shows that you're measurably more intelligent and have a better memory when your phone is not in your field of view. So that's an easy win too. Then there's digital environment changes. These are just things that make your devices less addicting and distracting. And there's a lot that you can do here. I'm going to share a bunch of tips. But my favorite one is this app called ClearSpace, which is free to set up for controlling one app. What it does is really simple. It requires you to take a delay before you get onto a distracting app. So if I want to go onto Instagram right now, I can't immediately start using it. I've got to go through this 15-second breathing delay, which is super annoying. That's the whole point of the app. And what this does is it helps you realize when you're turning to that digital pacifier without thinking about it. And then you can start to retrain how you respond to boredom and stress and anxiousness, which is really what reducing your screen time is all about. It also asks you, how long do you actually want to use this app for? So I can say, okay, I'm going to be on Instagram for 5 minutes. After that, it kicks you off the app. To get back on, you've got to go through another delay. And I have a limit of 3 sessions a day. If I do a fourth one, my friend Kaushal gets a text from ClearSpace, and he'll call me and give me a hard time about it. So super helpful tool. Again, free to set up to control one app. Same goes for a very similar app called OneSec. That's also free for one app. So you can take down Instagram and TikTok for free with those two. I think it's a really helpful tool to implement. The other thing that I'll say is that any device that you're using for school or work or any productive purpose, you want it to be as close to a library as possible. It should be something that's ideally only used for school. Because the more that you use it for entertainment, the more that you're kind of confusing your brain, and the harder it's going to be to stay focused on it. Now, obviously, you're occasionally going to have to use things like YouTube to study, but there are tools to help with that. There's this thing called Newsfeed Eradicator. It gets rid of all the recommended videos on YouTube, which is 70% of the time that people spend watching YouTube videos is from recommendations. So now it's just the search bar, and it's the account you're subscribed to. A lot easier to use it in the way that you really want to. Now, lastly, we've got the social environment. And this is a big one. This is why I come and talk to entire schools. Because the truth is, the way that you are using social media is impacting how your friends are using it, and the other way around. So how many of us are in a group chat on Snapchat or Instagram? Yeah, I'm sure it's more than that. Unless it's very different. Well, if we are in a group chat, right? What that means is that if you start to notice that your relationship with these apps is getting unhealthy, there's a pretty big social consequence to taking a break from them. Right now, you're legitimately missing out on what could be important updates from your friends. So it's a lot harder to control your own use of them when there's this social pressure to be on them. Now, initially when Snapchat came out, I think that was fine because it was just a communication app, right? But what they did is they laid a trap. They promised us a better way to communicate with each other without telling us they were going to use it to sell our time and attention and try to get us addicted. So I think we should fight back. An easy way to do that is to move group chats to communication-only apps. That way you don't have to be on social media. And more generally, social norms around technology really influence how we use it. So I can come here and I can share tips like ClearSpace and how to think about using social media. That will help individually, but to really solve this problem, it has to come from you. So what I'm hoping to do is pass the baton here. I want to start a Project Reboot club. There's a couple of other schools in Chicago that are starting these clubs that I spoke to this week. I think we should have a space on campus for those of you that are struggling with this to come and talk about it, to track your screen time progress. I'll share all of the materials, all the discussions, all the activities from the course at Berkeley. For students that want to facilitate this, I'll give you mentorship and all the resources to get this club started. So if that sounds interesting to you, please come up and talk to me after the presentation. I'm going to be sticking around on campus today. At some point, we'll find a time for interested students to come get information about this, and we'll send some stuff out afterwards. But it really, again, it has to come from you. I can only come here and hopefully inspire some change, but you got to take the baton. Now, lastly, there's our habits. And I know I've been saying phone addiction a lot while I've been up here. The truth is, I don't know if anybody's actually addicted to their phone. I think we get addicted to escaping discomfort by seeking distraction, and the phone is just the shortest path to distraction that we've ever had. Even if you got rid of it completely, that problem is still going to be there. To really overcome it, you have to become more intentional, online and offline. You do that by building discipline, resilience, and mindfulness, and those things get built by focusing on your habits, what you do on a daily basis. So there's 4 things that I try to do every single day to build those traits, and that's learn, move, think, and do. So learn, I mean, school definitely counts, but ideally it's something in that protein and vegetables corner of the content map. Some skill you're trying to build, some concept you're trying to understand, consuming a podcast from someone that's a good inspiration for you. Move, pretty obvious, just taking care of your physical health. It's a lot easier to be intentional when you feel good and sleep well. Think is really important. For multiple years when I was in college, I was living life with a blindfold on. Because there was not a moment in the day that I would be alone with my thoughts, other than maybe showering. I'd wake up, immediately be on Instagram, walking to campus, I'm listening to a podcast. While I'm on campus, I'm in class, I'm talking to friends, I'm on my phone. End of the day, I'm watching YouTube videos until I pass out. At no point was I just sitting there and letting my brain run. And when that happens, it's like life is sending you messages, right? There's things that you need to take time to sit with and process. And if you don't create space for that, it's like you've got this mental inbox that starts to overflow. I mean, think about how it would feel to wake up tomorrow and see 5,000 unread text messages. It just leads to this feeling of anxiousness, right? That was my normal for multiple years in college because I wasn't taking time to think. So going for a walk without your phone, without podcasts or music, taking time to meditate or journal, anything like that is, I think, really, really important for your mental state. And then lastly, so much of unintentional screen time is just downstream of academic stress. And the biggest change that I made that helped me become a better student in college is I realized that I was optimizing for the wrong thing. Most of my stress came from the fact that I was evaluating success based on the grades that I got on my tests and in my classes. But your grades are just supposed to be a measure of your learning, right? So instead, I decided I'm just going to focus on actually learning things, right? I gave myself a new metric to optimize for, which was time spent focusing undistracted. And I just set this goal of every single day, even if I don't have anything urgent that's due, I'm going to do at least 1 hour of focused work on my most important thing. And sure enough, all the grades came as a byproduct. So I encourage you to give yourself a scoreboard. Actually track the focus sessions without your phone, sitting down, undistracted, and you'll notice that you can train that like a muscle. Now the last tip that I'll share is, in all the work that I've done with students over the last few years, I have found that there's one particular intervention that can be more helpful than everything else, and that's to do some form of a digital detox. Now, I don't want this to be confused as me saying just getting rid of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for 1 week is going to magically resolve this problem. It won't. But what it will do is it will open up a window into the unconscious habits that are driving how you're using technology. Because you'll go to TikTok, even though the app is deleted. And that'll allow you to see, oh, okay, I'm bored right now, or I'm stressed. And start to retrain how you respond to those emotions. And what it really comes down to is switching from seeking pleasure to seeking satisfaction. There's this trap that most of us fall into, which is when we're not feeling good for whatever reason, We think the way to resolve that is to do something that feels really good in the moment, right? Some form of sugary food, video games, social media, whatever it is. You almost always feel worse afterwards. I'm sure we can relate to this, right? After I finish a long scrolling session, it feels like I've taken an anti-nap. Like I'm the opposite of being recharged. Instead, if you do something that brings you satisfaction, it doesn't feel bad in the moment, but does feel good afterwards, going for a walk, calling a friend, writing a journal entry, working on a side project, playing an instrument, whatever it may be for you, that's a much healthier way to respond to something like stress, boredom, or anxiousness, or just take a break if you need one. Now I'll wrap up this presentation by bringing this slide back up. Because none of this time has been spent yet. It's all still under your control. So just recognize that free time, that's your most valuable resource, and do not give it away to social media companies for free. All right, thank you all so much for being here. I hope this was helpful. Thank you. And if anybody has questions, feel free to come up and ask me. I think we're going to start filing out to the hallway now.
All right, so we are going to dismiss balcony